This is a WSFL-TV weather special. Hurricane season amid a pandemic.
Hopefully we don't have to deal with the hurricane, but I think we have to assume that we're going to have one.
The coronavirus forcing changes in how we prepare.
We are going to have some issues in our shelters this season, especially when we're trying to accommodate for social distancing.
However, just like we saw in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian.
We were scared, but we felt like we were going to make it.
The community always comes together to overcome the challenges. This is a WSFL-TV weather special.
All right, for the next 30 minutes, we'll be helping your family get ready for hurricane season. This year is unlike any other because of the added threat of the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be having forecasted above normal Atlantic hurricane season. NOAA's Climate Prediction Center is forecasting between 13 and 19 named storms. They're predicting 6 to 10 of those storms could become hurricanes, including 3 to 6 major hurricanes. That's Category 3, 4, or 5, with winds of 111 miles an hour or higher. The official hurricane season runs from June 1st through November 30th. If a storm does develop, what will hurricane shelters look like with social distancing? Reporter Michelle Casada talks with local emergency management directors to find out how shelter plans have changed during COVID-19.
You may be nervous about going to a hurricane shelter during a coronavirus outbreak, and county leaders get that. That's why it's so important to know your evacuation zone and know that shelters may look a little different this year. You may have to wear a mask. Emergency management departments are doing everything they can to keep you not only safe, but healthy.
How does a COVID-19 hurricane shelter look? What does that distancing look like? Are we going to have more shelters open? This is uncharted territory.
It's the question on the mind of city and county leaders across the state.
Bottom line, though, is that the rules aren't changing.
Bill Johnson, director of Palm Beach County Emergency Management, says evacuation zones are not changing, but you may be greeted with more questions at a shelter this year. If you are sick, you will not be turned away.
We will probably do some screening in our shelter to make sure that if you are not feeling well, that we're able to maybe segregate those that are not feeling well and provide them the assistance that they might need.
In Palm Beach County, you will see people more spread out at shelters. In schools, Johnson says some may be set up in hallways. In Martin County, Director of Emergency Management Michelle Jones says they're prepared to use classrooms to socially distance people.
It is going to be different in sheltering in the time of COVID. But we are doing everything we can following the CDC guidelines to make sure that we have a safe place for them to go to.
Shelter meal times will be staggered to avoid large gatherings. CDC guidelines say if you must go to a shelter, avoid coming into contact with high-touch surfaces like handrails. Bring your hand sanitizers and face masks. Just like hurricane models change, county leaders are getting new information on COVID-19 every week.
What does it look like if we see a resurgence, if we see more need, and we just keep altering and editing our plans to whatever the most current guidance is?
Michelle Casada, WSFL TV.
This year, your hurricane kit should look a little different from years past. Meteorologist Glenn Glazer breaks down what you need to keep your family safe.
We are all used to empty shelves during hurricane season, but right now, shelves are empty a lot because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's a good time to start to get your hurricane kit together. And of course, you should have all the usual things that you have in a hurricane kit, including non-perishable food items.
You should also have plenty of drinking water for at least 3 to 5 days.
Make sure you have any medicines that you might need during the storm or after if you can't get to the store. Make sure that you have some cash on hand in case the power's out and ATM machines are not working. Your phone needs to be fully charged. You should have gas in your car's gas tank, propane if you're gonna need that for maybe a small generator that you have. And also make sure you have food for your pets, right, Mr. Fitz? Food for your pets is very important, as well as some treats. Okay, you can just stay there. And also, this is new from the CDC this year. It is suggested that you have face coverings, also antibacterial wipes and sanitary wipes, hand sanitizer, and soap. So those are all some supplies you should have for this year's hurricane season. You can find a full hurricane supply checklist on ready.gov. I'm Glenn Glazer for WSFL TV.
You can get your hurricane supplies tax-free during the Disaster Preparedness Sales Tax Holiday. This year it runs from May 29th through June 4th. The tax exemption applies to specific supplies from batteries to tarps, portable generators, and more. Now is the time to stock up on supplies in case we do end up in a hurricane's path this year. Last year, South Florida narrowly avoided a blow from Hurricane Dorian. The storm stalled right over the Bahamas for almost 2 days, pummeling the islands. The community there continues to pick up the pieces from the devastation.
The sound outside is truly like a freight train. The pressure dropping, your ears popping. In my living room, water was coming in and rushing like a river through my house. When I went out, it was unbelievable to me.
About 170 miles from West Palm Beach, in the Abaco Islands, lies Green Turtle Key. It's a tight-knit community of about 500 people.
You feel safe there. The beauty, of course, is unmatched.
And it's where I and so many South Floridians have escaped to from everyday life.
When you live in a crowded area, metropolis type place, you come over there and the freedom and of what you feel, it's wonderful, I think.
Just 2 months after my last visit to Green Turtle, this island paradise spent more than 72 hours battling Hurricane Dorian. Winds on Green Turtle peaked at 185 miles per hour on September 1st.
I had about 6 hours of didn't know if I was going to be alive at the end of the storm or not.
My good friend Molly McIntosh is the general manager at Bluff House Beach Resort and Marina. She's lived in the Bahamas for 30 years, raised her family there.
It's part of my soul now.
Molly felt prepared for Dorian.
We had dog food in there, we had water, a radio, VHF radio, and snacks, you know, to be safe in there. We were scared, but we felt like we were going to make it.
But the storm's intensity grew fast, and the destruction was catastrophic.
When the roof came off, we moved underneath a bed in another area of the house, and you could just hear things hitting the house, just slam. I mean, other houses were coming apart and hitting my house. It was pretty scary. I really was not sure I was going to be alive at the end of that storm.
Just days after Dorian, relief started to pour in from South Florida.
I was crying when people were bringing us stuff, and we couldn't have survived without it.
4 months later, power and water were restored to Green Turtle Key. Bluff House continues to work on most of its villas and the marina, but Molly says it's the spirit of the people that has rebuilt this island after Dorian.
GTC strong. I mean, we're gonna make it through and be better than ever.
The coronavirus pandemic has slowed restoration on Green Turtle Key. Many volunteers had to go back to South Florida, but the Bahamian government is allowing food, water, and building materials to still come in. Molly tells me Bluff House Beach Resort and Marina may not be able to reopen until next March. For the past 15 years, the error cone has shrunk each year thanks to improvements in forecasting skills. This year, the cone will not tighten up at all. Meteorologist James Weiland explains why.
2019 was actually a pretty tough year. We had Dorian, which was a really tricky forecast, as probably people in Florida remember.
The extra long stall in the Bahamas is what threw a wrench in all the forecasts. Also, Sebastian, a lesser-known storm at the very end of the season, in fact, it was the last storm we had much larger than normal errors. So when the National Hurricane Center averaged the past 5 years like they do to come up with the new cone, any ground made in the previous years pretty much leveled out. The question is this as good as the hurricane forecasts are going to get?
Technology has taken us this far, and will we pause for a little bit before getting better?
Better, but not perfect.
What we're not going to see is these tremendous gains that we've seen over the past couple of decades.
However, there may be improvements in the intensity forecast for hurricanes thanks to updates on computer models and programs like the Hurricane Forecast Improvement Project.
There's some pretty ambitious goals from that project in the next 5 to 10 years. So if the technology continues, I think we'll start to see a nice bang for our buck.
Right now, the National Hurricane Center is testing out ways to extend the forecast out further in time.
We're putting out internally 7-day forecasts to maybe one day issue further out in time predictions. both for track and intensity, but also for our outlook to predict when storms might form.
Goals to look forward to in the future. For WSFL TV, I'm meteorologist James Weiland.
South Florida businesses are hoping to avoid a 1-2 punch. First, the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, a look at how they're trying to avoid another disaster during hurricane season. Plus, plans for power. How this piece of technology could help get the lights back on if a storm strikes. Now, what's in a name? The story behind the name choices for hurricanes. And why hasn't Dorian been retired? Although it was so devastating. And it's not just people who hunker down for a hurricane. A look at the efforts to protect animals at the Palm Beach Zoo.
This is a WSFL TV weather special.
For many businesses just reopening, the arrival of hurricane season is bad timing. Staggering losses and rising costs are creating a stressful summer. Reporter Matt Cesney looks at ways some are trying to avoid disaster.
It's part of Florida. It's part of our lifestyle here, and we have to deal with it.
Scott Phillip needs no reminder of the coming hurricane season. His restaurant in Juno Beach is called the Hurricane Cafe. And after being closed for the COVID-19 pandemic, he's feeling financial stress.
You try to put money away. You try to make your money in season, put money away for, for things like hurricane season, things like that. Unfortunately, this year we're not going to have the, anything left over to really help us through the hurricane season.
It's a story many businesses this year are experiencing.
There are ways that people could potentially be looking to cut costs in their insurance policies, but those may not be ultimately, in the end, the best decisions to make.
Gina Clausen-Lozier is an insurance expert with the Boca law firm of Berger and Singerman. She says looking to cut insurance costs could be tricky.
Sometimes by decreasing the premium, what you're doing is actually really increasing your deductible. So a lot of times when you're looking at the cost in front of you and you're not forecasting in the future, you may be walking yourself into easily, for businesses, a 7-figure deductible, and sometimes that surprises people.
In fact, new trends in flood insurance could save some money, as private companies are now offering coverage that was only available through the federal government.
1 in almost every 4 flood claims are in non-flood areas. Think about that. You're told, I'm not in a flood area, except you have almost a 25% chance of having a flood event in a non-flood area.
The big concern for restaurants, even near the ocean, is not only protecting the building, but also the inventory.
We have it pretty much down to a science of buttoning down the building. We start to see storms. We start to limit the amount of product that comes in the building and things like that. So there's not a lot of waste on the backside if we do lose electric or are closed for an extended amount of time.
Any sort of shutdown during this hurricane season will only make a bad year worse for many of these businesses that have already lost weeks during the COVID-19 shutdown. They hope this hurricane season does not add to their losses. In Juno Beach, Matt Cesney, WSFL TV.
Right now, Florida Power and Light is also taking steps to make sure it's prepared for hurricane season and ready to restore power if it goes out. One of the tools FPL plans to use is this substation rover. It has the ability to inspect and diagnose issues with the company's substations remotely using infrared cameras and sensors. FPL says it will help speed up restoration time after a storm strikes.
It's a completely autonomous rover that allows us to do inspections from anywhere. It allows us to drive it around either after a hurricane or before a hurricane to look at equipment to see how it is currently operating.
Fascinating. FPL also has a large drone fleet that is used for inspections, which minimizes the number of linesmen needed to repair the grid. Studies show giving a storm a short, distinctive name gets your attention. You might be wondering, how did all those hurricane names come about, and why wasn't Dorian retired this year since it was so devastating? Here's meteorologist Katya Hall with the answer.
Here's a look at this year's list of hurricane names. The practice of naming storms goes back several hundred years. Early records show Spanish explorers named storms after saints. Later, hurricanes were identified by their latitude and longitude. However, these naming systems proved confusing. So in the early 1900s, an Australian meteorologist gave storms female names. Since this method became popular among the general public, the Hurricane Center adopted it in the 50s. Male names were added about 20 years later. That method is still used today by the World Meteorological Organization. The WMO has 6 alphabetical lists reused every 6 years. A name can be removed from the list if a storm is too costly or deadly, making it inappropriate to use again. The committee meets up every year to vote out any storm names. Due to COVID-19, this year's meeting was cut short, so they'll discuss retiring Dorian, Imelda, and Lorenzo at next year's meeting. Katia Hall, WSFL TV.
While we stock up on supplies and get ready to hunker down or evacuate when a hurricane is approaching, it's a whole different game plan to keep the animals safe at the Palm Beach Zoo. Meteorologist Steve Villanueva shares how the zoo prepares for a storm.
From entertaining primates to majestic large cats, the Palm Beach Zoo is home to roughly 400 animals. Thousands come to visit the attraction every year. Casey Coy is the zoo's chief operating officer. His team of animal handlers take their responsibility to keep the animals safe very seriously, including when a hurricane is approaching.
So what we generally do is close down relatively early to the public so that we can balance preparations of our staff at home and our animal home at the zoo.
These structures where some of the animals, like these spider monkeys, spend their nights are built to withstand damaging storm winds.
Our zoologists spend a tremendous amount of time developing good relationships with these animals. So when the storm threatens, they can literally recall them and they'll go right back into their night house.
While most of the animals stay in their night houses on the complex, they are hurricane rated and they'll be nice and safe in there. Some of them have to be transported here. This is the animal care complex. This too is hurricane rated, and the animals they bring here are also quite safe. The hospital also acts as a command center for the staff during storms.
And we have a small crew of between 5 and 7 people at the zoo that will actually ride the storm out on site.
Every year brings new challenges. Dorian slowed down so much that it affected their game plan.
And one of the challenges that we had was trying to slow down our preparations in moving animals. We don't want to move animals unless we have to.
But plans are in place in case another storm comes. In West Palm Beach, Steve Villanueva, WSFL TV.
It was like going into a disco ball. There was so much lightning.
Up next, hear from hurricane hunters. Their mission is to fly right into the eye of the storm.
This is a WSFL TV weather special.
Welcome back. Flying right into the eye of the hurricane. It's the mission of the team known as the Hurricane Hunters. Meteorologist Katia Hall shows us how the flights help when it comes to forecasting a hurricane.
It was like going into a disco ball. There was so much lightning, I had to rely on everybody else on the aircraft. I would realize that this is okay, nobody else is freaking out.
Since that first flight in 2014, Lieutenant Commander Robert Mitchell has flown this NOAA WP-3D Orion Hurricane Hunter aircraft close to 150 times through storms.
Whenever people hear that we're flying a manned aircraft into hurricanes, you're like, there's got to be a better way. But in reality, flying a manned aircraft into hurricanes is sometimes the best way to collect the data.
When a storm sets its eyes on the U.S., hurricane hunters are called in to hunt it. They'll usually spend 3 hours flying around.
It's like being stuck in a washing machine on a roller coaster.
Even going through the treacherous eye wall.
Even over the noise of the engines, over the noise of the wind flow going across, you just hear a massive torrent of water.
Then into the eye.
And very quickly afterwards, it starts to get brighter and brighter and brighter, and then you break out into what is sometimes a bright, clear, sunny, calm day.
During the mission, the team verifies satellite and computer data, captures high-resolution images, and deploys dropsondes, or as Mitchell likes to call them, weather balloons in reverse.
They're little tube packages that we drop out of the aircraft with a parachute on them, and they'll fall through the atmosphere, fall through the storm, collecting data.
All this information goes into the computer models. What comes out is a more accurate forecast.
At the end of the day, after getting bounced around and beat up in a hurricane, knowing that the data that you just collected is going into that next forecast, and anything like that just really makes you smile and makes the job worthwhile.
Katia Hall, WSFL TV.
Sounds like an exciting ride. Well, he spent weeks trapped after Hurricane Dorian, and his rescue grabbed the attention from around the world. Up next, a look at Miracle, the dog's life now.
This is a WSFL TV weather special.
Big Dog Ranch Rescue says they learned a lot about including your pet in your hurricane plans after rescuing 387 dogs from the Bahamas when Hurricane Dorian ravaged the Bahamas last year.
Please include your dogs in your evacuation plans just like you would your child's. Make sure you have all their medications, their vet records, their rabies certificate.
Big Dog Ranch rescued the dog that became known as Miracle. Miracle was found by a heat-seeking drone when he got stuck under an air conditioning unit in Marsh Harbor. Emancipated and dehydrated, the world watched as Miracle Dog was nursed back to health. Just days ago, Miracle received his final treatment. He's currently enjoying his life with his new family, which includes 3 big sisters. One of them is even writing a children's book about Miracle. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay safe this hurricane season.